application for a loan.
Thank you.
It's probably one of the biggest problems, and I don't know if I must actually answer. I'm going to pass this to John again, but so you can start to get ready for it. I think it is one of the biggest issues, and that's why I spoke earlier about factoring. Because if you get a contract with government, so now you've got a contract, you're a small business and you get a 10 million rand contract, and you need to procure 5 million rands worth of raw materials or product or services to be able to deliver on that contract. How do you do it? So it's very difficult. So if we can then build a system where you have a relationship, the contract with government, and then we build a third-party relationship with a bank or a finance house that says we see that contract as the security. And then what we will do is the finance house, they will then, being a third party in that agreement, they will then say, all right, fine, we will release a certain percentage of that contract to you to get your business going. Now, that's just one area. But if you go and look at the world competitiveness ratings and you find what's the biggest holdback to business in any country, in America, they'll tell you it's access to finance, specifically because of what's happened in the banks across the world post the recession. But it hasn't happened to our banks. In actual fact, our banks in South Africa have gone the other way. And we can actually be very proud of that because it's a great statistic. Our banks have gone from a bank risk rating of number 6 in the world to number 2 in the world. But I must say, I always say to the banks that that's the bank risk rating. In other words, what are the chances of our banks failing, of going bankrupt with your money invested in that bank? Number 2 in the world is the bank risk rating, means we are safe as houses. But that doesn't mean if they've got a good risk rating that they shouldn't be risk averse when it comes to lending money, which is a big problem. But I think we are seeing the banks starting to loosen up a little bit more. Obviously they were very nervous. Banks across the world have been very nervous over the last few years, but they are seeming to be loosening up. So that's one area of funding. And then, we have some areas of funding, but obviously that's not really a government's job, is to say how do we then become a bank to fund whatever loans need to be taken to get the economy going. So we've got certain areas that we can fund, and Jonathan may talk to that, or help you access funding. But maybe on a last point, and talking about the banks, and I don't know if I'm allowed to promote one bank over the other. Probably not. I'll get into trouble. But we do have a bank in South Africa, which is a very interesting banking model. I know that they're using a lot of the Indian examples, and for me, which is quite amazing, is to see the percentage of loans that this bank has given out that are unsecured. So they haven't asked for that security. And it's a huge percentage. I think it's now sitting close to 60% of their loans are sitting on unsecured. But they're showing huge growth, and they're showing that this market can be trusted. It's a market that is not running away. And that's very exciting for me, because that shows that our businesses and our entrepreneurs are prepared to stand by what they've said. They'll borrow the money, and any money in any business is a high risk. Businesses are risks. They, all of you are SMMEs or starting companies. It's very difficult. If you look at the failure rate of companies across the world in the first 5 years, those numbers are huge. And so it is a risk. But for me, it's very encouraging to see that these banks are becoming more flexible and loaning this kind of money. But I don't know, John, if you can add to that.
Yeah, I just think in terms of the access to finance, as the Minister has mentioned it, it is a particular challenge with regard to access to finance. What we've tried to do with regard to that is, that if you look at some of the programs that we're doing, we try and complement that. The one is that we're looking at is with the National Empowerment Fund. We're looking at access to finance by individuals. I think also then with projects such as the mentorship, where you connect with a mentor, and the mentor has some other type of fund that he can connect you to. That's one. But I think we also must note that, the experience that I've picked up, that no business can go in there, or no entrepreneur can go in there with 100% loan in many cases. It doesn't gel well with cash flow. So I think it's always important to look at your individual business circumstances and take it from there. But certainly from our side, I've learned to look at your particular circumstances and to see how we can actually assist. There's one organization that is running a pilot, national organization that doesn't want to be, because it's running a pilot, they want to sort of advertise it. But I think I have some access to it, and I think possibly system on that.
Thank you very much.
But you see, that's also